All right, so good afternoon. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for yet another episode of Keeping It Brief, which is a service of the Bucks County Women's Advocacy Coalition. And I'm your host, Maria Evans. Today, our guest is the inimitable Jacqui Rogers, who is just our issue specialist on living wage, among other issues, and we're thrilled to have her. Before we get there, I just want to give you a little bit on this midday gathering on Zoom. Is a monthly opportunity to get a quick update on some of the most important issues that face us here in Bucks County, and I think we can all agree that having a living wage is right at the top of any list we would put together. I want to begin with just a quick note about the technology. When you joined, your camera and your microphone were muted. Automatically, you can see and hear us. We can't see or hear you, so enjoy your lunch or whatever else you want to do and enjoy and learn from this conversation. You can, however, and I encourage you to please put any questions in chat. I will be checking those throughout the next 45 minutes. And you can find chat just at the bottom of your screen. So you might have an ellipsis. You can click on that and you'll see one of the options is chat. Or if you have a full screen, as might be a little frightening to have me full screen, but you can just see that it's right down there and says chat. So please use that liberally to put in your questions or comments. Now, a little bit about us. Bucks County Women's Advocacy Coalition is a nonpartisan coalition of individuals and organizations who work towards a socially just and respectful society. We were founded in 2008 and designated a nonprofit in 2015. We educate and advocate for gender equity and economic security for all. We're thrilled to call more than 300 individuals and more than 50 organizations our partners. By working together, we can speak with one voice and make that voice more powerful as we work for systemic change. Okay, so this afternoon's conversation, as you noted when you came on, is being recorded. Give us a few days and we will have a link to it on our website, so you can feel free to share. Our next newsletter will also highlight this, as well as a great blog post that Jacqui did to kind of highlight some of the issues going forward. So the combination of those two will be a very valuable resource for you. And we're trying to make things easy for you to help take action. So there will be an action alert that follows this, and we encourage you to not only do it, but to share it far and wide. Okay, you can also follow up by following us on Instagram and Facebook, especially. And again, liking it, sharing it, that's what we count on. We need to get the word out, and we have not just to speak to ourselves, but to share it with like-minded folks. Today's program, like other educational programs that we offer, is free. And while we operate efficiently, we do have some costs like this. So if you feel this program and the work of the coalition is of value to you, please consider making a financial contribution. And you can do that through our website. You can mail us a check, whatever you want. We'll figure out a way to get your money. So don't worry about that. Now, with all of that being said, it is my pleasure to introduce Jacqui Rogers to you. She moved to Bucks County after a career in education, including with the Department of Defense Education Activity. In addition to volunteering with such organizations as the AAUW and the League of Women Voters and the NAACP, Jacqui serves as our issue specialist on living wage and is a proud individual partner. Welcome, Jacqui.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So tell us what is the issue right now with the living wage? How much is it? Why is it insufficient?
Well, I'm going to read what Governor Wolf recently said in January. He said Pennsylvanians deserve to be paid fairly for their work, but far too many Pennsylvanians, for them, fair pay is just a dream because of Pennsylvania's embarrassingly low minimum wage. The fact that Pennsylvania's minimum wage hasn't increased in 13 years is an embarrassment, and it's an insult to hardworking Pennsylvanians who are doing the same amount of work, but find their paychecks cover less and less every single year. And over the past decade, the cost of food, gas, and just about everything else has gone up. But the purchasing power of our minimum wage has dropped by nearly 17%. Compared to 50 years ago, the minimum wage has lost 31% of its value, That means today's workers in Pennsylvania have to work 31% more hours to earn the standard of, to even earn the standard of living that is considered to be the lowest in this half of the century. So that was Governor Wolf stating the situation that he feels we live in Pennsylvania.
You had shared something really interesting, Jacqui, where you were talking about how we're surrounded by people who don't share our minimum wage.
Exactly. If you were to look at the map, it's not only just the mid-Atlantic states, it's up in through to the Northeast, I think with the exception of New Hampshire. I think it would, when it would borders on Wisconsin way out there, everybody else has raised it. Places like Ohio and West Virginia have done the same thing like Florida. Their legislatures were the same as ours. They would not consider it. So the people had to put on the ballot, and that's how they got it. We don't have that ability here in Pennsylvania.
So I know we'll be talking about what we can do as far as legislation towards the end, but give me a little bit more of an idea of what 725, and you're saying it's worth a third less basically than it was before. But tell us what in Bucks County, what does that look like?
Okay, I mentioned in the blog, and I know you're going to put it out again, is if you were to go to the living wage calculator that's put out by MIT, you'd see that in Bucks County, you need just a single person needs to make $31,000 a year. And remember, this is basic needs. And most of these people that earn this do not get any kind of health care, often no time off. So 725 comes up to $15,085 a year, which is about half of what is needed. Representative Brian Sims in Philadelphia found that a person in his district making minimum wage has to work 80 hours a week, every single week, every single day for an entire year. Again, just basic needs, which just means
For one person.
For one person, if you can find it. Yes, if you can find it, which is the other thing, and we'll get into when it's tipped workers, how difficult it is to find a place to live in when you don't have a definite salary every week that you can present to someone. It's even worse. So it's the same thing that we keep hearing these people call lazy, and it's hardly being lazy, and they're predominantly women. We're told that this is a kid's job. More than 70% of them are over 20 years old or older. And I always say with that, try and find me a kid who'll babysit for you for $7.25 an hour. It doesn't happen. So even the thing of, well, this is for kids wouldn't even hold up. But that isn't the reason. Many people, and up until 1968, the minimum wage was actually working. It was increasing along with productivity. And so people could actually live on it. And if that had happened, productivity is really high now, in spite of, again, what sometimes you'll hear from people would try to spread negative things about low wage workers, would be around $25 an hour. So
Wait a second, you're saying productivity is $25 an hour?
It would be worth $25 an hour if we were going along with what the productivity is today. Productivity is at a high. It's not as low. People work very hard. People produce a lot. And yet over the years, things have been stagnated. Some of the things that have been done, terms such as job lock, which means that even when you're hiring people at these low wages, there are agreements that we will not promote them. If they come in on this area at this level, they will not be promoted. So there are amazing things that are also being done. It's not just the wages. It's all of the things of lack of health care, lack of any time off. I don't think that we realize that these people earn their time off by the hour, in some cases an hour a week. And so if you have to go for your kids' conference at school, You're using up like 2 weeks of time off. That's it. So it's,
Wow.
and
Talk about the tipped wages and housing
Oh.
and how that doesn't enable you to live.
okay, all right. Well, I'm going to go, and I'm just going to, because there's a lot, and there's a lot that's just amazing about the tipped workers. Jennifer Beria, who is the Pennsylvania Secretary of Labor and Industry, has come up with a regulation which she's presented to the Regulatory Review Commission. And she has come up with 5 points that she'd like to make. And I need to also add that she's able to do this. And Governor Wolf was also able to get $15 an hour for the Pennsylvania government workers and the contractors by following on what the Department of Labor is doing at the federal level. So she said here, the 5 points that she's concerned about for tipped workers is the definition of a tipped employee. And at this point, since 1977, it has been anyone making more than $35 a month in tips. Okay, you can be kept at the $2.83 an hour rate if you make less than $30, more than $30 in tips in a month. They're asking to move that up to $135 a month, which is, not a whole lot, but it's a step in the right direction. She's also asking that they align with the federal regulatory update of governing the tip credits. Okay, there's a thing called 80-20, the 80-20 rule. And that was actually attempted to be taken away in the last administration. It was about to go into effect in February 2021, when the new Secretary of Labor stepped in and put out for government public comment to change it. What that 80-20 rule means, any of you who've worked in hotels, restaurants, as many of us all did when we were in high school and college and so forth, is that you can be pulled to do stuff where you can't earn tips. If I'm being paid $22.83 an hour, all right, but they need somebody in the back to do some sort of cleanup. If I go beyond 20% of my working time, they have to bump me up to whatever that person in the back is working. So if that person's making $8.50 an hour, then that's what I'm supposed to make. The last administration wanted to do away with that totally so that you could be pulled from earning your tips for as long as they needed you and still only make $2.83 an hour. And I know there's also a rule that employers are supposed to bring that up to the regular minimum wage if the person is not making that amount in tips. However, that's impossible to regulate, because if you stretch it over, and what employers do is you stretch it over a month, and then you don't have to follow that. The next thing is, and hang on for this one, they're asking that the tip pooling not include managers, supervisors, or the business owners. Okay. That's another one that has been done. They also want to have a prohibition against deducting the credit card fees from the tips. When we put our tip on, most of us pay credit cards, and you can even ask your wait people when you're there how they receive their tips. We do it all the time. And if it's taken off, if I write the tip on there with my credit card, are they going to receive the whole tip? Because it's become practice in the past few years, because they've been able to get away with it, is that the management would take the amount, say the 20% they have to pay the credit card company for using that credit card. So that's another thing that they would like reversed. Again, they were able to do it during the last administration. The other thing is that they would have to clarify that service charges on there are not tips, because when they add it on there, which many restaurants are doing right now to try and make up for the fact of the losses they've made during the pandemic, they will charge a service fee, and no one's complaining about it, but they also believe that's the tip. So what they'd like to have it, a regulation is that you have to state that. But this is something that the owner has put on there, management's put on for their own purposes, not for the
So
person.
Jacqui, are these federal efforts? And
They
where
were
do
the federal
stand?
efforts, but our secretary here in Pennsylvania she has asked to have those put into place here in Pennsylvania.
And where does that stand?
That stands that she has, and of course, when things go to places in Pennsylvania, they go there for a long time. She has sent her proposal to the Independent Regulatory Review Commission. And they're supposed to meet on the 21st of this month to review it. Okay, so that's where that stands. Another thing is about the managers. Another thing that they will do is make someone a manager. When you make someone a manager, it can mean that they no longer are able to collect overtime. Okay, so I went and looked it up because I know that that qualification can be very low. And in fact, in Pennsylvania, it is $19,685 that's the lowest, but they can make somebody a manager at that level, which means that they can work them as many hours as possible and they don't have to pay them anymore. I did also look up that the average here in Pennsylvania is $38,500, which is most of the lower wage managers make in Pennsylvania. Okay, so that's been another abuse also.
And would these be necessarily full-time jobs with benefits, or do they tend to be not full-time jobs and not benefits?
It varies. They don't usually have great benefits, but sometimes one of the things that they'll do with a manager is they will give them some sort of health care and they can build up more easily time off. But another thing about it is that you say, well, why would they take it if they can do it? But it goes back to the question that you posed that I brought up in the beginning is if you're trying to find a place to live or you need to even buy a used car, if you can't show that you have a stable income, then it's very difficult to find anything. And when you have to earn if you have $2.83 an hour, after Social Security is taken out and so forth, you're approximately taking home $58 a week. Okay, and that's, remember, what all of your benefits are going to be based upon is that amount. So if you go and you say, well, I make $200 or $250 in tips on top of this, the landlord is, but it's not any guarantee. All I see is it's $58. So that's why some people take a management job, because they can at least go with an amount and say, well, I'm at the very least, I'm going to be making this amount. I'm going to be bringing home, if they make like this 38,500, they would bring home, they'd make before taxes and everything, $678 a week. So that's much better than 58. So that's the reason for that. There have been all kinds of things done to tipped workers. And the biggest problem is for women. The sexual harassment is, and it's become even rampant during the pandemic, where women were, one of the favorite things was, take off your mask, honey, so I can see how cute you are. Really a humiliating sort of thing. I was listening to a thing by AOC, and she was saying, she was a bartender, and she was saying that, you try not to allow anyone to harass you, but when the end of the month is coming and your rent is due, she said, sometimes you ignore it because you have to. And it's the only industry where tip workers are, and they're the only people who are not paid by the employer, but they have to rely on the customer and have to, as a result, put up with a lot of humiliation.
Okay. You were talking about how, I know a lot of people say you've already broken the myth of, how much money this really is, and that 70% of these people are over age 20. What percentage are women?
Over 70% are
Okay.
women. right here, I've got 60% overall are women, 35% Hispanic, 29% Black, and 18% Asian. On top of that, I was just reading the book that Iffy recommended, The Black Agenda, and in there, the author, one of the authors, it's a book of essays, uses the term that many women, and particularly she was talking about in the Black culture where women are expected to hold together the family, and in most of our cultures, I think that's a whole problem we're having with whatever happened with the she session here is that she uses a term called these women are the and underpaid. So you're underpaid for all of these things, for healthcare, for hospitality, retail, restaurant work. These are all of the major low wage workings. And the people in there are also, women are also the ones who have to take care of children, have to take care of parents, have to take care of anyone. And another thing that she points out is that they often can't get out of these sorts of low wage situations because they also have to give up their education. They're the ones who can't go to school because of this. And so it's a constant thing that we hear about generational wealth and the gap there. And that's a big contributor to that. You can't build up any wealth if you can't ever get advance. So that's another whole situation here. I think one of the things you're seeing, and is what I've seen, which has made me so upset over the past 4 years of watching all this, is it isn't just the low wage, it's everything that comes with it. It's just the constant trying to get ahead and people throwing in all of these things. I mean, the chains tried to even do a non-compete clause in there, so that if you're working at Wendy's and you have to take 2 buses to get there, but you find that the Taco Bell near your house is hiring you, the pay is the same, possibly. The conditions are probably the same, except that you get to take 1 bus, which makes it a lot easier for you to take care of your family. So you decide, well, I'm going to go take that job. So shockingly, some of these chains agreed not to allow that. They, and originally non-compete clauses were for people at very top positions. This was the tech industry that was doing this to keep people from, grabbing their top engineers and going to other places. So it was never meant to be this.
So Jacqui, isn't there been some movement on that recently at the federal level?
Yes. And this is the thing, that our Department of Labor has been incredible in the past year and a half. Like 2 years into the previous administration, I started getting the Department of Labor readouts into my email, and they came like once a month. And usually it would be something that would not be in favor of workers. So I just thought that's the way it was. The Department of Labor puts a thing out once a month. The new administration came in and I started getting them like, oh, well, every couple of weeks. I now get them, and it will be 5 or 6, sometimes as many as 8 actions taken several times a week. I get them almost daily now, where they're trying to undo these things. I use this I told some of the people who may have heard this from me before. Maggiano's in Philadelphia was one of the first places that they went after, that they were doing, and I think many of you, this has happened to many of us, when you work in some of these places, you say it's supposed to be from 8 to 4, but you're told to come in at 7:30 to get ready. And you don't start to clean up till 4, so it takes you another 20 minutes, half hour, and they don't pay you for that. That's not. So Maggiano's was apparently having these meetings where, kind of like pep meetings, and they were not saying they required people, but it was pretty much required for them to come in and then to stay after. So that was one of the first ones that the Department of Labor went after. And they had that particular restaurant itself had to pay back over 100 and some odd $1,000. Yeah, 100,000, I think around $123,000 or something back in overtime pay that they owed them. One of the things that company is now doing, their parent company is the Springs International, that also owns Chili's and Maggiano's, and they're experimenting in some of their restaurants with offering childcare for a $10 copay a day for their workers. So, some of this stuff that's happened, this recession, one of the things that's been different about it has been that in the past, when we've had economic crisis and people have been stuck in these low wage jobs, and they're put at more of a disadvantage because it's like, well, these jobs are going to go away and you're going to have nowhere to go. But a lot of it due to technology, people found their own jobs and found that it wasn't worth them going in. There's also a myth I'd like to clear up. A large majority of these people were not collecting unemployment. They had been making so much. You remember that was $58 a week paychecks? Well, that's what your unemployment went on. So those people did not get any unemployment at all. So they're not staying home, being lazy, collecting unemployment. They never could. What they did instead was try and find something else that they could do to make a better living. And as a result of all of this, it's now, I just recently read that 84% of restaurants throughout the country have reported they've had to raise their wages. And some of them, and they've had to add benefits. And some of them have had to go up as much as, over $20 an hour, which leads me to the whole thing of the bills that we have here in Pennsylvania. The prime one that's been brought up every session, SB 12, sponsored by Senator Christine Taglioni, would be at the moment $15 by, as of today, 2027, keeps changing. When I started this 4 years ago, it was supposed to be $15 by 2022. And working with Senator Hayward in the group, the coalition works with the Economic Advocates Coalition, which is headed by Raise the Wage PA, and it's Senator Hayward is part of that. The PA Budget and Policy, we support that also. And so that $15, Senator Hayward, so we're going to try and push it back a couple of years, isn't even adequate now. So by 2027, it's not going to be.
Jacqui, did you say 14 or 40 years ago?
For what?
When you started talking about the $15 wage being good for 2022. I was just, did I mishear?
I think you must have. I don't know. I'm trying to remember what I
No
said.
problem. So you're saying this is even insufficient by 2027. That's the takeaway.
Yes. Yeah. I think I meant to say 24, but I probably didn't. 4 years ago, I said when I started. Yeah, 4 years ago. I'm sorry. Yeah. So what SB 12 would try and get $12 right now and $15 by 2027. It would eliminate preemption. This is the other problem we have in Pennsylvania is the cities like Pennsylvania, like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, want to raise it on their own. You can't in Pennsylvania. They want to guard against wage theft, which is the other thing I just talked to you about, and it's based on what the Department of Labor at the federal level is doing, and increasing the penalties of violation, which is also what the Department of Labor has pushed through, because that's another thing. Either you got to catch them, and that's why it's so important when I tell you that I'm getting all of these readouts almost daily that the Department of Labor is catching these people and is going after them and making them pay this back. It would also require, and this is a really important one, we often hear from the human service people that the problem with getting an increase in the minimum wages, that they don't get enough money to be able to afford to do that. So part of SB 12 would be that it would require the Department of Human Services to keep track of and then publish the savings that they make by people not having to receive assistance, and that money would have to go for salary increases, pay increases to the people who were involved in childcare, home care, on these community-based services. So that's a big one, and that was just recently added. She didn't have that in there before, but that's great to see. The companion bill out of the House is, the number keeps changing, but this year it's HB 345, and it continues to be Patty Kim, Representative Patty Kim, and now she has Stephen Kinsey out of Philadelphia, who's also her co-sponsor, and it's called One Fair Wage. And in this one, she has all of the same things from SB 12, but also that it becomes, you do away with the tipped wage totally. It's left over from Reconstruction. It needs to be done. And
you mean tipped wage is left over from Reconstruction?
It is. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hey, I have another quick question because I see that we're coming up, in a few minutes.
Okay.
And that is the big pushback of this, right? Is that it's going to be bad for employees, that if people are being paid a lot more money, that somehow that is going to be detrimental and people are going to go out of business and not be able to afford. So lots of people will lose job, and overall for society, it's a negative. So tell me if that's not the case. You're shaking your head.
It's not the case. No, because number one, the more revenue that you have, more money, the people who spend the most are your lower wage earners and your middle wage earners. So the more they have, the more it goes back in there. It's also that those people spend locally, which is what keeps small businesses alive. Some of the things that they're saying that small businesses go out for things like poor location, poor management, not having enough capital, not having the skills to run the business that they have, and they will throw it back and say it's minimum wage, it increases. It is not. Here's the thing about technology. They'll say, oh, well, then they'll turn to technology. Newsflash, they are. Technology is here to stay. AI is here to stay. And that has nothing to do with minimum wage. It's going to continue. There's a thing called Flippy. And Flippy is being used in places like McDonald's, and that Flippy cooks French fries and pours drinks. And so reading some things by some economists who wrote about Flippy is that what these places are now going to need are technicians right on the premises to be able to handle this technology. So yeah, you won't be the person cooking the fries, but you might be the person who is taking care of the technology that has been put in place of this. So yeah.
And you mentioned about economists. You're not alone in this. It's not just Jacqui Rogers believes, right? Tell me about the 600 economists.
Okay. In 2014, 600 economists, including 8 of them are Nobel Prize winners, sent a letter to Congress stating that the study of the minimum wage is the most studied subject in economics, and that they found that there is no overwhelming negative outcomes because of this. Also, there's a famous, it's called Card and Krueger experiment that was done between the borders of New Jersey and Pennsylvania, right down the street here by the Delaware, when New Jersey raised their minimum wage. And everyone was saying, oh, they're going to lose, and everyone's, Pennsylvania's going to gain. Well, that didn't happen. No businesses closed. There were no dire things that happened in New Jersey. And that experiment has been carried out in other places, other border places around the country. And also David Card, who unfortunately just died last year, but just after he received the Nobel Prize, in part for his research on the bordering states, and when one increases that. So yeah, it's pretty much been put to rest.
Okay, well, if you just want to wrap it up, as far as what do you want everybody on this call to do right now?
Okay.
Or perhaps tomorrow when their email comes with your actions. Call action.
Yeah, I think, it's education. It's knowing these things and knowing what needs to be done, and contacting your local representatives and senators, Also, there's going to be this Education Advocates Coalition is trying to put something together where we're going to go around the states and do Zoom calls asking people what they understand and what their feelings are, and trying to collect it to be able to then form an education program that we can put out and give people the answers to these questions. Because like so many other things, misinformation it's just rampant out there. And what I think the governor said it was 765,000 people in Pennsylvania that are being affected by this misinformation and the fact that we are not moving along. And it's only the leaders in the legislature that are keeping it from moving. There's the majority of people in Pennsylvania want it. And it's believed, Senator Haywood tells us, that if they took it to a vote, it would actually pass in the legislature. But your leaders up there will not have it come out of committee and go on the table.
You said 765,000 people. Is that the amount of people who are making minimum wage?
Yeah, he's got he's got 765,000 workers, and that's more than 13% of the employed population would gain if we did what he did for the state employees and the contractors, if that was applied to everyone else. He also stated that if we went directly to $15 an hour, that would benefit 1.5 million workers here. And the reason for that is minimum wage is a floor, remember, and everything is built up upon that. So everyone benefits above that. It isn't just these people who make $7.25.
Thank you. Thank you, Jacqui, for bringing that up. There's so much information that you've shared, and it's so good. And how you can keep a smile on your face and not be absolutely frustrated with
there's a few things thrown around here from time to time.
There you go. I just want to thank you. I'm sorry that we're towards the end of our time, but I really want to thank you for your time today. And I also want to share our thanks with the board of directors for the Bucks County Women's Advocacy Coalition, and to you and all the issue specialists who are able to share your knowledge, because you're absolutely right. The first thing we need to do is know what we're talking about, know the realities, get rid of the misinformation, and your ability to do that on this particular issue and others, and track the legislation and make it understandable and actionable by the rest of us is so appreciated. And I want to thank everybody also on the call for who joined us, for keeping it brief, and all supporters of our organization. So that we can speak with one voice and make that a more powerful voice that brings change, systemic change that is needed. So again, very special thank you to you, Jacqui, for helping us out today. And I would remind everyone that we'll be back next month for Keeping It Brief. That'll be on April 6th, again, Wednesday at 1:30. And our guest will be Jean Weston of the League of Women Voters. And we're going to be talking about opening primaries and constitutional amendments and other issues that affect a little thing like our democracy. So I look forward to talking to all of you then. And I thank everybody. So thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye, Jacqui. Thank you.
Thank you.